Hello, hello, hello. Take two.
She's stealing my thunder. Hello, 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 and welcome back to Hunter Tuned. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, just because I've kind of been getting into RC cars a little bit more lately, just with, the cold weather and stuff coming around. But I did kind of wanted to go through setting up my GBX3 Custom Works sprint car. This is a dirt oval sprint car. Well, it could be used for carpet oval, concrete oval, any real like circle track racing. For RC, that's kind of what I get into, I guess, because the track by me has a dirt oval and a carpet oval. So I'm going to be setting this car up for the dirt oval, and they actually just started their season back up, so I'm looking to get into it because it's it's a fun hobby to get into for the winter. I know a lot of people on the channel aren't really for RC stuff, but a lot of people were actually kind of interested in it when I brought it up on one of the last videos. So, like I said, I'm just going to kind of set this thing up and kind of just show you what I'm doing, and maybe give some explanation of some of the stuff. I'm not no expert RC driver or setter upper or anything like that. I just kind of know the basics and what to do to get the car to work. And yeah, so we'll get right into it. To start, this is the car as you see it. This is what they call a roller. Just kind of like real cars, where they say it's a, if it's a car that's ready to drive, it's a ready to run, they call them, or if it needs electronics, it's usually just a roller. Which this car I bought as a roller with a steering servo only. So the steering servo is right here. It's just a little box that controls this little arm, which turns the wheels left and right. Fairly simple. And then we will be adding our own motor and speed controller. So this is the motor I'm going to be using. This is a Trinity 17.5 turn engine, or motor, not engine. It's a motor. But anyways, so this is the Trinity 17.5. This is a D4. This is a little bit older model motor, but they are one of the better, faster motors that you can buy. I actually got this motor with the car when I bought it. So when I say it's a 17.5, that's just kind of the speed rating of the motor. The lower the number of the motor, say if this is a 17.5, a 21.5 would be a slower motor, and a 13.5 would be a faster motor. So the 17.5 is required for the sprint cars, at least in my, the racing club that is at Hobbytown in Oshkosh. They require to run a 17.5 turn motor for the sprint car class. If you were to run a 13.5, you'd be ahead of the pack, obviously, and they like to keep the racing kind of fair, so they have everybody run the same motor, or same turn motor. You can run different brands and stuff, but you need to run, 17.5 class is what the sprint cars run. So we're going to run the 17.5 and install that, and then this is the speed controller. I actually got a different car that I bought a while back, and the guy gave me like a whole box of parts with it, and this was laying in the bottom of the box, and this is actually a speed controller. But it does need some attention. It's a little bit beat up, as you can see. The fan, this is a cooling fan right here that sits on the top to keep the electronics cool so it doesn't overheat or anything like that. But the one problem I do see with this is the fan obviously isn't attached anymore. So I'm going to have to get some servo tape, which I have a roll of servo tape sitting in my other room. That I'll probably just put some servo tape on the bottom of this guy so I can mount this back onto the speed controller, because it's supposed to sit on there like this. And then we will mount this onto the chassis with servo tape again, and then once it's mounted onto the chassis, we will connect the wires to the motor, and then we'll have to run the receiver, which this is just a basic receiver right here. This is something that your radio will bind to, and now that I think of it, the camera is actually sitting on top of my radio, so you can only imagine. I'll show you here in a little while, but the radio is the controller with the trigger and the steering wheel to be able to control the car, and these, like the servo, is going to hook up into the receiver on one of the channels, because this receiver has 3 different channels. So you can run like channel 1 is usually like steering or throttle, and channel 2 would be the other one. So whatever one you used on channel 1, you'll have to use on the other one on channel 2. So there's 2 inputs usually. One is for the speed controller, which is the throttle, and then the other one is for the steering servo, which is going to be the steering wheel on the remote. So I'm going to have to mount this somewhere onto the chassis as well, and then we can plug in everything to the receiver, and then plug the speed controller into the motor, and then the speed controller also goes to the battery pack. And that's kind of the basics of the electronics and what goes on in an RC car of anything. I can actually show you a different car. So this is another car that I have. This isn't a sprint car. This is actually a late model. I have a late model body for this one, and you might be able to tell the setup on this is very similar. This one's already set up and wired. Actually, it doesn't have a receiver, but this is the speed controller. This is just a basic brushed speed controller, nothing fancy on this thing, and it runs a brushed motor. So the 17.5 that I was saying is a brushless motor. There's two different motors that kind of come about with RC cars, and one is a brushed motor and one is a brushless motor. Just like a drill or like a impact or anything like that, brushless is usually more reliable, smoother running, and more powerful, where the brushed is a more basic, cheap, kind of budget motor. And then this is just one of my battery packs right here. I have electrical tape over it, but I also have another battery right here. This is just a 2-cell Lipo battery pack, which runs about 8.4 volts fully charged, and then when it's discharged they're at about 7-ish volts. And yeah, I'm trying to explain some of this stuff. I've never really made an RC car video. I just kind of know the basics and, like I said, all that kind of stuff. But like I said, this is the late model that I have. This car, I'm going to be taking all the electronics out and doing something else with this whole setup anyways. So I was just going to kind of show you how the car looks kind of set up already. Motor goes into the transmission back here. And you have 2 gears. This actually has a broken drive shaft. I welded it up last night because I went to go race this car last night and ended up breaking the drive shaft. So this car is kind of down for the count. But yeah, to remove the engine, it's pretty simple. You just got to there's 2 screws that hold the motors in to the RC car. Just same with the sprint car. It just has 2 little screws that hold the motor, and then you have a pinion gear that goes on the end of the motor, and then a spur gear which goes on to the transmission or differential. And then you can play with these gears as well to kind of make the RC car faster or slower. To kind of beef them up or make them faster, you re-gear them. So when you re-gear a RC car, I'm saying a lot, which means I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, and this video is very awkward for me to make. But yeah, Christine's over here laughing at me. But trying to explain this stuff as best as I can, I guess. Very well. She says I'm doing very well, so thank you if I'm doing very well. Just trying to explain it to basic, because a lot of people from the channel don't know anything about RCs and baby cars. She calls them baby cars. Okay, so anyways, the spur gear is attached to the transmission, pinions attached to the motor, and when you gear them, you would either make, like, say you wanted to make this thing faster, or have it have more top speed, which I've actually noticed when you gear them up, it gives it both for the most part. It gives it more torque and more top speed. So when you gear them up, you either you get a bigger pinion gear, but there's a problem with running a bigger pinion because you only have so much room for the gear down here. There's actually slots where the motor can pivot back and forth when you set your backlash and stuff on this. You can only run so big of a pinion gear before you can't move the motor back enough. So what you do to compensate for that is you would run a smaller spur gear. So you can run a really small spur gear with a really big pinion gear. And I've had some RC cars that have exceeded 100 miles an hour on radar. I actually used to do drag racing stuff with RC cars, and one of the cars I had, I think the fastest I got it up to was like 106 or something like that. But a lot of times you can't make them go that fast because there's a lot of hardships that come about with trying to make something go that fast that's so light, because when you go that fast, the wind will get under the car, and the RC car will literally become a parachute, and it'll fly up into the air and you'll break a lot of shit. But for the most part, basics of gearing, smaller spur gear, bigger pinion is going to make it go faster, but there is a limitation with this stuff, especially with dirt oval. The rounds, or the heats, the racing heats, are usually 4 to 5 minutes long, and you need to have the RC car survive that 4 or 5 minutes. So if you have the setup way over geared and you're going too fast, you'll burn the motor up, and you cannot usually exceed like 160 degrees or 100. I mean, I've ran them up to 200 degrees, but that's starting to melt stuff. Usually you want to keep the temperature under 160 or at 160 after a 5-minute heat. So that's usually where you want to gear your setup, or just gear it to the track till the car is fast. And sometimes, you know, the fastest gearing is not always the best for a small track, because you can't keep it under control, and then you spin out and you hit walls and you'll hit other cars, and you'll piss a lot of these crybabies off that race baby cars. But anyways, like I said, that's just kind of the basics. I might go over some more of this stuff with you guys if you guys are interested. There's a lot of stuff to cover with RC stuff. It's actually pretty complex. It may look kind of basic and simple, but when you're setting up a race car to go racing RCs, there's a lot of R&D and technique that goes into it, which I know nothing about. Like I said, I just know the basics. But all right, guys, so the sprint car is back up here. I'm going to quit babbling and talking, and I'm going to start with, I actually already modified the chassis a little bit. I actually got some Velcro. I got some Velcro strips right here. You can buy these for like $1 or $2. And I put one piece of the Velcro onto the chassis on the left side, because I'm going to be putting another piece of Velcro on the back side of the battery. And when I put the other piece of the Velcro on this side of the battery, I'll be able to just plop the battery onto the chassis, and it won't fall off, and it won't go, you know, flying. So that's just how I'm going to be mounting the battery. There is better ways to mount the battery, but with the chassis that's so small like this, it's kind of hard to mount a larger 2-cell Lipo battery. A lot of guys will run the smaller battery packs and stuff like that, but I like running the big ones just to make sure that it doesn't go dead and it doesn't hinder performance while racing. So anyways, that's the one thing that I did do to the car so far, is I did put that piece of Velcro down to mount the battery. So the next thing I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm just going to get some tape and put some tape on this guy and mount the fan onto my speed controller. I hope this speed controller works. I just did a basic test earlier and it powered on, so I'm assuming it works, but we'll find out, I guess. So I'm going to get some double-sided tape, mount this thing, and then figure out a good spot to mount the speed controller. Alright guys, so took a... what the fuck I just said?
A beer break.
A beer break. Yeah, so had to grab a beer. This shit's getting stressful. What I did kind of off camera is I mounted the motor. So I took 2 screws and I mounted the motor to the motor plate, and I put my pinion gear on, and I set the backlash for the motor. So down here, I have the motor hooked up now, bolted in, and the gearing is tight. And I set the backlash. You just kind of want a little bit of rock back and forth. You want it tight up to the gear, like you want the gears to mesh tightly, but you don't want it to be to the point where they're not rocking back and forth just a slight bit. If you have it too loose, it's going to strip out the teeth, and if it's too tight, it's going to overheat the motor and it'll bind up and all that. So the backlash is actually kind of important. I'm kind of a snob when it comes to setting the backlash, but I got it all set. Everything is good to go on there. And now I have a piece of the double-sided servo tape. And I put some on the back of the fan for the speed control, and now I'm going to mount that onto the rest of the setup here. Like I was saying earlier, this servo tape is the stuff, well, you should buy servo tape specifically for doing stuff like this for RCs, because the regular double-sided tape you buy at Walmart and whatnot is just not strong enough for this kind of stuff. So the servo tape from like a hobby store or toy store will actually work way better. Alright, so now that the speed control is pretty much ready to mount onto the chassis, I grabbed a battery, one of the ones I'm actually going to be running, and I'm going to put some Velcro down the side of the battery so we can mount the battery into the chassis, and kind of figure out where I want to position the speed control in the receiver. If I were to put the speed control somewhere that it would interfere with the battery, you know, then I'm going to have other issues where I'm going to have to I'm going to have to take the Velcro off and reposition and all that stuff. So I like to put everything in where I want it, and then once I figure out where I'm going to put everything, then I'll actually glue it in, or, you know, in this case, I'll servo tape it in. So just going to grab my battery and this strip of Velcro right here, and I'm just going to cut a section the length of the battery. So I'll just have to cut a small amount off of this and then tape it onto the battery. And I put the tape kind of on the right side of the battery, so I can offset the battery off of the chassis a little bit, because on a sprint car you kind of want a lot of the weight to the left side of the chassis, so, you know, when you're turning left, the car it's not right heavy, because if it was right heavy, then the car would want to, you know, roll over or anything like that. So now that is taped in, it's Velcroed in nice and sturdy. Now I'm going to figure out where my receiver went so we can mount that. And I'll probably put the receiver up front. So I'll probably put the receiver like up this way, more towards the servo, and then I think I'm going to put the speed controller like somewhere in here behind the receiver. I don't want the receiver coming, you know, close to the motor. I don't want it back here and then put the speed control here, because then the servo wiring is going to have to go over the fan on the speed controller, and it might damage the wiring. So I'm going to try to mount that up front here, and then the speed controller right here, and then it's just a couple wires left to wire this guy, the motor, to the speed control, and then just getting the radio bound up and all that kind of stuff. Alright guys, so I got the sprint car kind of all wired up for the most part. I had some issues with the speed controller, and I had some issues with my soldering iron. I can't actually get these wires to solder together for some reason, so that's kind of annoying, but I do kind of just have the wires twisted together, and I kind of wanted to show you guys that it does operate and function. The only issue that I'm having with the car so far is that the throttle on the remote is extremely sensitive. It's like if you just push it barely at all, like if you just pull the trigger just a slight bit, the car goes completely wide open right away and doesn't have any like linear throttle action going on. So I don't know if that's an issue with this, you know, remote that I'm using. I actually just ordered a FlySky remote off of eBay. Those are actually like Chinese remotes that are fully adjustable, digital. You can set like how sensitive you want the throttle and all that kind of stuff on the remote. So if I get the remote, I could probably bypass an issue that I'm having here. I don't know if the speed controller is giving me issues as well, because like I said, this is one I literally found laying around. So I don't know if it's bad or if it's just giving me issues for some reason, but like I said, I do have everything kind of twisted together. I'm going to give the battery a hookup. I'm going to turn my remote on first, and then hook up the battery. And then there's an on and off switch over here. We'll flick this guy on. And then the steering obviously gives you a little twitch. You guys probably can't even see right now. Let me move the camera back. Alright, so as you can see, the steering is working with the remote. And then when I give it throttle, I gotta be super gentle with the throttle. So as you guys can see, there's like half throttle right there. But yeah, if you cram on this thing real hard, it just goes wide open right away. This thing's gonna rip. So like I said, I got to get these wires soldered up for good, and not just kind of temporarily on here. But like I said, everything else is wired up and working, and I think she'll be good, I hope. But I'm going to just show you guys the body of the sprint car and kind of how to install that. I mean, everybody mounts the body differently. I got a mess going on up here, I apologize. Trying to wire and fire everything in like a 2-foot fucking table here. Alright, so there's two pieces to the body. Actually, there's a couple pieces to the body, but this thing kind of just sets over everything. Sets over all the wiring, the battery, the speedo, and all that. And there's 2 spots for it to hook up into the frame on the front. You kind of just got to line those spots up and push it in. So up on the front here, the body pushes into the frame with 2 little plastic pins, and then the rest of it will get lined up on the back. So we'll just have to make sure all the wiring and everything is on the inside of the body before we put it on. And there we go, the first part of the body is on. I mean, this is pretty much the whole body, but we have this tail section here as well. So this tail section is just going to kind of mount up on the back and will be held in by a C-clip or a body pin. And then the wing is right here. This guy just slides onto the, there's 2 little bolts with washers on each side of the cage, and they have little slots on the wing that everything kind of lines up with, and then you can position it however you would like. So something like that is what it's going to look like when it's fully finished. This thing should be a handful, I'm hoping. The only other thing I'm going to do after I get everything electrically sorted out is I'm going to be switching the car from rubber tires, because it currently has rubber tires on it, and I'm going to be switching them over to foams. Some RC car racing actually requires foam tires, and in the class that I'm going to be running, it will require foam tires. So I'm going to be switching the car to foams, and then it should be all good to go. Hopefully, other than a couple maybe minor gearing changes. I'm going to have to play with the gearing a little bit because the gearing just kind of guessed at it. Hopefully it works out. It seems pretty gnarly just sitting here, you know, giving it throttle on the table, but I don't know. We'll find out. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit different and a little bit kind of random, but I just figured I'd show you what I was doing instead of not making a video at all. If you guys do enjoy this video, please give it a like and comment down below what you guys would like to see with RC stuff, if you want to see it at all. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of people that don't want to see it, but for those of you who do want to see RC stuff, let me know what you guys have questions about or what you guys would like to see. I also do I have a couple RCs that I just use for bashing, or they say bashing, but it's like, you know, just kind of playing around in your street or backyard or whatever like that. I do have a few vehicles kind of dedicated just for that stuff, as well as other race cars as well. Like this is the late model. I also have this RC late model right here. That I may be messing with, and then I also love pan cars as well. Pan cars are kind of just like a flat, kind of the same thing I got going on here with the sprint car, except they're locked rear end, and they're pretty much meant for turning left and carpet racing. But they're really low to the ground, and they handle really good and all that kind of stuff, but they're super basic cars. Pan cars is something I'd like to get into as well this winter, along with the sprint car and a few others. But I'm going to quit rambling here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, if you guys do enjoy it and have other questions or interests, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear your feedback of what you guys would like to see. And until the next one, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you later.
But there's still going to be big cars, too.
Oh, yeah, there's still going to be big cars, too, not just baby cars. I'll probably go throw my transmission together one of these nights. Maybe tomorrow or the next day. I actually got my springs in from Speed Factory, but they actually they didn't give me the seals. I ordered a transmission seal kit, and I did not receive those in my order. So I don't know if they are shipping from somewhere else or if they forgot to put them in my order. I'm not exactly sure, so I'm kind of waiting on those to finish my transmission. But we can probably get the guts and everything finished one of these days. But yeah, don't worry, guys. We're still going to be doing Honda stuff and playing with the Mustang and everything like that. But like I said, when it's kind of cold out and you know, whatever, it's kind of nice to hang out in a warm place like Hobbytown and race cars in a warm environment, and you know, still have fun and still be racing. That's the important part. So yeah, anyways, see you later.